Welcome to
The Cleaning,
a podcast about Apple TV Plus's show Silo, Season 2. My name's Catfish, and with me, as always, is someone who won't stop nattering on about the circus. It's Bubba.
Hey, Catfish, I am so glad to see you, is what I'll say to your face. But just so you know, when I see you on a video call, I drop the red ball.
All right, that's a cleaning for you.
What? How could you?
No dropping
Catfish.
things.
Catfish, we're talking Season 2, Episode 4.
Got it.
The Harmonium. Juliette sets out on a dangerous quest to retrieve a suit so she can return home and save her silo. I'll interject, is it worth it? And also, Mechanical plans a meeting with Judge Meadows. On this pod, we'll give you our rankings of the episode. We'll have silo speculation. Is it better in the silo or the real world? The episode breakdown, a judicial debate, Catfish questions, Matt Murdick's musical analysis. And we're going to, later at the end of the audio podcast and in a separate video on YouTube, we're going to have our book talk section, which is really going to go crazy and focus on the vault. Before we get to our ratings, let's hear what our listeners have to say, because we love to say, who cares what we think? We want to know what you think. And the fact that some of our listeners are telling us what they think of episode 4 before we even record the podcast is incredible.
I love it. Let's get to them. Gen X Cat Mom, an old listener, but now on Blue Sky at All Mod Cons. And Blue Sky says season 2, episode 4 of Silo was the best one of the seasons so far.
Whoa.
9.5 double Vs.
Wait, double Vs?
Yeah, voluminous view screen. That scene with Bernard and the mayor was genuinely touching. The way he described to her what she was seeing was very sweet and oddly respectful. His masterful chess moves culminating. Wow.
When she says Bernard and the judge was genuinely touching, you know, that's another HR violation for Bernard, the way he is touching her. Look over here, look over here.
You know what? It's what's the worst HR violation? The touching or the poisoning to death? We'll figure it out. We'll talk about that more. But also, Bubba, another loyal listener, Link Hogthrob on Blue Sky says Solo is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs with a side of OCD and ADHD. Bernard is a great case study on power, the lengths to which it is kept, and the occasional humanity behind it. What did Meadows know? My kingdom for an elevator. 10 out of 10 double M's.
Wait, double M's?
Yeah, Meadows M. I don't know. It's redacted. What is it, Bubba? Meadows mumbles? Meadows mushrooms, maybe.
How about Meadows murder?
Meadows murder. Okay, well, it doesn't need to be redacted anymore. You're right. Meadows mushroom murder. That's a triple M.
Hey.
All right. Wow, Bubba. All right. So
Catfish, Gen X Cat Mom went 9.5 out of 10. Link Hogthrob went 10 out of 10.
Yeah, Link Hogthrob was upset with Gen X Cat Mom. He's like, what's wrong with you?
So now let's hear your rating on episode 4. I can't wait to see how you agree with them.
I'm going to give this episode 6. What I like to call triple Bs.
Wait, triple Bs?
Yeah, that's Bernard's Blissful Bistro. Eat at Bernard's and sleep well for the rest of your life.
What a great place. Now that is, for your last meal, what a great time. You get to wear the Oculus for a bit, Apple product placement, it's great. But 6 out of 10, Catfish, that is low.
Meadows mushroom murder. Well, you know, like we say, we're just two guys, and so I was so glad that we have our listeners up top, because some people sometimes say, like, why should I listen to this podcast where you guys hate on it? Listen, we've got all kinds of feedback, and I have to acknowledge my responsibility in this week's low rating, Bubba.
Yeah,
we always talk about how I read the book and then forgot it because I read it so many years ago. Well, Bubba.
Yeah.
I read the book this week.
What? Oh, this is awesome. So now you'll forget it this week.
Yeah, I will forget it. Now, look, reading the book, and I'm not going to do book spoilers. We'll do that later. But I have to acknowledge that it's interesting. There are strengths and weaknesses of the book in the show. In general, the characterizations are not, I would say, not very deep.
In which one?
In the book.
Okay. All right, sure.
In the book, characters are just used to propel plot points forward We don't get a lot of information. They get named. For example, in the book, Sims's name is mentioned a lot. We've never really seen Sims interact with anybody. He's just kind of talked about.
Yeah, I called him kind of like a muscle character in the book. That's all he really is in the book.
You know, when you have a show, you've got to like have people to follow, right? You've got to have like a main character. And even in the book, the characters, you know, characters get brought up for a while, they get dropped. Most of the time they get dropped because they're gone. They get killed. So, you know, it's a great idea. You know, this show, this is great. You know, okay, we've got all this amazing plot. We're thin on characterization. Let's boost up the characters and keep all the action. But that is not what has happened, Bubba. So let's just talk about, first of all, Solo and Juliette. Okay, I'll just say that I'm still not sure, and again, probably not paying close attention, what she was trying to accomplish in that diving scene. But even more than that was, why did we go through the whole thing where Solo opens up, he comes out of the thing, and then we go backwards? He hides again. She's got to get him to come out again. And I understand they do the character. They make the scene for more characterization with Juliette, but why not put that in earlier? Why do we have to like go forward and then backtrack again? It seems silly. Now, the Judge and the Bernard scene, which our two loyal listeners loved, I thought was a crazy, emotional, melodramatic whiplash. He poisons her.
As you do.
She's not upset about it. Okay? She's not upset. But also she's like, I have a secret, but I'm not going to tell you about the secret, even though I know I'm dying. And then she says she would have stayed with him if she hadn't learned this secret. And this is probably why she learned the secret. She cut off Bernard. She started drinking like a fish. That's kind of what I'm going to assume.
Okay.
But I thought that was all over the place. And I did appreciate the Oculus Quest product placement.
Good.
And a plug from the Costa Rica Tourism Board.
Of course.
But Bubba, I did not find that part of it affecting. I found that part, the way it was staged, ridiculous. I thought it was laugh out loud, funny, silly. So obviously I'm in the huge minority this week.
Oh, wow.
And admittedly, partly because of having read the book this week. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the word judge is used a lot in the book. We never follow a judge. The word Meadows is never used in the book. So while I appreciate that they need to have more characters in this show, I just didn't appreciate what they had the characters do. It felt like there was a lot of filler. And again, to sort of judge against the book, which I'm doing now, unfortunately, like you, the whole scene with Mechanical coming up, that was a lot more interesting in the book. Funnily, in the book, that had a lot more character development than the show did. We learned more about supply, so we learned more about the silos. So anyway, Bubba, I know you are going to be with our listeners. You might give an 11 out of 10 to this one, Bubba. What was your rating for this week's episode of The Silo?
Well, Catfish, I watched this episode and I immediately went online to look at reaction. And so listeners, I'm going to take you back to where this podcast started. And in those early episodes, I always talked about when I read this book, I believe in 2011, I read this book, the first book in the series called Wool. And I started telling everybody, I'm like, boy, if some TV network wants to make a show that could be as big as Game of Thrones, do this book. Listeners, we are 14 episodes into this series, and they're not really doing the book. They're doing different things. Now, last week, episode 3 really wasn't from the book, and I went 9 out of 10. I actually really enjoyed it. This week, Catfish, I'm actually going lower than you are.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm giving this 4 double P's out of 10.
Double P's?
Yeah, double P stands for pointless plot lines. I love Billings. I love Deputy Hank. What are they doing but going into a deep investigation of something that we, the audience, know the solution to? Like, we know everything. We know how this whole riot in the Down Deep happened. We know what led to the death of Cooper. Yet now we're watching 2 characters I really like, see if they can figure out what happened. And I know listeners may be saying, but you did learn, new information. You learned that Patrick Kennedy is still alive. And I would say to that, why in the world would Sims leave Patrick Kennedy alive? They've killed the judge. They killed the original Mayor Johns. They killed Deputy Martins. They killed people for a lot of things, for seemingly less things than what Patrick Kennedy knows. Yet they're going to let him still live so that Billings can figure out the truth of exactly what we know happened in the Down Deep riot. That honestly drove me crazy. Second thing that I'm going to say, and we're going to break down the episode, and I do want to say, I know my score is ridiculously low. There are moments in this episode that I really like. I actually thought the communicating with the Down Deep by dropping a red ball or a green ball was brilliant. But Juliette in the first season, if you listen to our podcast then, I used to get so frustrated with the characterization that because she's kind of socially awkward around people, she would sometimes, blurt out and yell at them, I want the truth, for justice for George, justice for George. And at the beginning of this episode, she was ridiculously rude to Solo. Again, people may say, well, that's the character. They're making her kind of somebody who's an introvert, who doesn't really deal well with people. And I'm just being completely honest. I wouldn't hang out with someone like that in real life. Like if somebody was that kind of harsh and mean and kind of always, frustrated, I wouldn't want to hang out with them. Now, Juliette at the end of the episode where she's kind of opening up outside the door for Solo, that's the character I like. And so I give it a ridiculously brutal rating of 4 out of 10. But I'm just trying to be honest with listeners. Last week, I was 9 out of 10. This week, it was so low for me that even the stuff that I did like, and once again, I'm going to talk about all the positive things in this episode, there was just too much that I could not handle well with Catfish.
Well, Bubba, I'm just going to say, if listeners are upset with our ratings,
yes,
just remember that these are gentlemen, or what I like to call Matt Murdick sevens. Because Matt never goes below a 7. So if you're upset, just imagine that my 6 were 7s.
Now, we love to say, it is not just a saying we say. It really doesn't matter our opinion. Your opinion matters. Everybody's opinion is valid.
That's right.
We want to hear from you. I always love to say, even though I didn't get into it, I love to hear from people who did love the episode. So please reach out to us and tell us what you thought on all our social media channels. We know we have a great group of people who always watch us on YouTube or listen on YouTube. Please give us those YouTube comments. Let us know what you think. And please subscribe. Real quick, my dad was a salesman. And my whole life, I was like, I never want to be a salesman. God, it sounds like so terrible. And here I am trying to sell you to subscribe. It's just because YouTube we won't appear in any search unless we get subscribers. So please, if you enjoy this, or even if you hate this and you want to stick it to us, please subscribe anyway. We need it. For everybody on audio podcast, also please subscribe. We are having trouble. We started, 11 years ago, 12 years ago as an audio podcast. Now, because so many big celebrities are in the podcast game, we don't always show up in all the searches. Why? We need more subscribers. And you can tell us what you thought of this episode on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Double PHQ, the word double, the single letter P for podcast, HQ for headquarters, at Double PHQ on all your social media channels.
Love it, Bubba.
Catfish, it is time for silo speculation.
Okay.
And we are going to go big picture here. Now, if you are a listener who has read all 3 books, please do not spoil this in YouTube comments. Don't do anything like that. I'll try to block any YouTube comment where I think somebody is trying to spoil it. But if you haven't read the books, or maybe you only read the first book or only the second book, and this is a trilogy of books that this show is based on, I want to go big picture speculation. What is an ending to this series that you think it's going to head towards? If the outside world is really toxic, is the happy ending, hey, we get in the silo and everybody knows the truth and we live down here for, however long for the rest of our lives? Or is it Juliette maybe reuniting with her dad and being happy again? Catfish, big picture, because I don't think you've read the second 2 books, correct?
Correct.
Where do you imagine the end goal of this storyline is headed?
All right. Well, I mean, we have the mystery of we've got another silo where somebody survived. We know there's other silos around. So the question is, did anybody survive in those silos?
Yep.
Right. That could be a bigger issue. I mean, for me, it's something I talked about last week before I'd read the book. And my question is, I've always been skeptical that like keeping everybody in the dark is the way to go. Because again, like I said last week, like they're not joking about what's going on outside. It's bad out there. And at this point in the story, people think it may not be bad because Juliette went over the hill.
Yep.
What I've always thought was, why can't we just have the truth and then people will be, if not happier, at least like there won't be so many revolutions.
All right. Well, that is a wonderful thing. Listeners, again, only if you haven't read the full trilogy, I want to hear you. What do you think will happen? How will this story end if there is an ending? What do you want to see as a happy ending? How about this? If you're, maybe you love grim dark and you're like, I want all the silos dead, kill them all. Reach out to us. Let us know. Go down on these YouTube comments. Let's hear your inner writer, your inner hopes and dreams for this silo speculation. Woo.
Let them go. All right, Bubba.
Yeah.
Now we've got a game we play every week.
Ooh, okay.
And that is, it's based on only this week's episode.
Okay.
Don't use information from previous episodes. Based on what life is like in the silo in this episode, would you rather be in the silo in this episode or in the modern day world that we're living in right now, Bubba? So what do you say? Better in the silo, worse in the silo?
Well, Catfish, we know that if you live in the one silo with Solo and Juliette at this point, you're going to hear wonderful organ music that'll remind you of church. So I think it's better in the modern world because I only go to church around the holidays. I don't have to go every week. That is a joke. I'm kidding.
I thought you were going to say better here because you don't have to constantly listen to Solo natter on.
Hey, no, I like Solo. Okay.
All right, enough. All right, I would say, listen, it seems to me like there's only one quest game in the silo, and that is the Costa Rica exploration game. Now, look, I have a quest. There are some games I can't play.
On your Oculus, huh?
On the Oculus Quest, there's like a space game where you're like free floating. It just makes me dizzy. So it sounds, number one, it seems to me like this Costa Rica thing might make me dizzy. And also I'd get real tired of that one unless I could like shoot the toucans or whatever. They give me something to do. So I'm going to say better here because there's more than one quest game that I can play here.
That is a red level relic. I'm throwing you in the brig, Catfish. Hey, listeners, is there something in this episode that makes you think, boy, I'd rather be in the silo or rather be here in our modern world? Reach out, give us a comment. Let's hear your thoughts. Catfish, it is time. We were both ridiculously tough in our grading of this episode because it just didn't connect with us.
Worst ever.
Are we going to talk about Juliette and Solo's skinny dip? Swimming session? Are we going to talk about the
spoiler alert?
Are we going to talk about the Judge and Bernard and Sims menage impeachment? Or are we going to talk about Billings or the Down Deep crew coming up to meet their fate? What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I like to start with the things that I'm less excited about. So let's eat the mushroom platter first, not because it's poison, but because I don't like mushrooms. And let's start with Silo 17, where I thought we spent a lot of time that I did not like being there.
Okay, so sure enough, Solo, he's out of the vault. I think, listeners, you can kind of put together some clues, or the show is giving us some clues. This riot, this rebellion that destroyed his silo, it happened when he was in grade school, right? Like it happened when he was, what was it, level B classes, they said?
Yeah.
Because he's talking about, I like elephants. They're really smart. And he's talking about, I just read 20 Jules for Juliette Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in the before time. And hey, this is my old classroom. There's my friend who wore this backpack. Juliette is so focused. And again, this first half of the episode, Juliette, is the part that I just really, it's like for me, fingernails on chalkboard. Maybe you're the other way, Catfish, where did you empathize with Juliette, where you've got this kind of nattering kid wanting to relive preschool? What do you think?
I mean, she's trying to handle business and he will not S the F up.
How about when he tries to play her a song and it's leading up to his idea of how they could pump air into her lungs when she's underwater. These two are just at this beginning part of the episode, they are oil and water. They are knocking against each other, and it's really not pretty. And did Juliette, we know she's, a person who doesn't communicate easily. Maybe she really is only opened up to a handful of people in her life, meaning Walker, Shirley, and George, 3 people in her whole life, because maybe she didn't open up to her dad really when she was young. And so she can't talk about stuff, but like she could learn information. You have Solo here telling you all sorts of things about his silo and his life, and you would think he might have lots of brilliant information. It was his idea about, hey, get a fireman suit, and yet she is not hearing it. He does have an idea of, hey, I could pump this into this air down so you get some air. And what is she thinking? She's thinking, you know what? I'm going to tear apart your organ, sucker.
Right. And then he's like, you can put it back together, right? She's like, maybe, but whatever, your needs are not important.
Now, this is the first part. You called it a regression of his character. A bit like Walker is an agoraphobia sufferer who is now out of her place all the time. Solo's not that. He's out of his place, but it's not just that he wants to get back to his vault. It's almost like, I've got a job to do. I got to get back to it. Did I leave it locked? Like he has been brainwashed almost by whatever his deal is. I've got to do it. That's the way it comes across to me.
It does, but in a I hate to kind of ascribe things to the show, but
sure,
I have to admit I was a little let down because you're sort of set up for like this is important.
Right.
That even though he doesn't know that, like, getting back there, that's going to lead to some new information or whatever. And then when he gets back and he puts the code in wrong twice, you're thinking exciting things. You're thinking, okay, maybe someone's in there and they changed the code or whatever.
Right.
And then it's just, oh no, he got nervous. He puts the code in, he goes in and he hides. So it's sort of like, I mean, am I blaming the show because my imagination got wild with me and I thought something interesting was going to come out of this?
Yeah, something sinister almost. Yeah.
Right. So is that my fault for thinking something interesting was going to come out of this, and then I was just disappointed because all that came out of it was that he'd regressed and was hiding in there again, and this just allows Juliette to open up really for the first time ever. So I mean, I can see where people would be excited by that, but I just was let down because I thought there was going to be something more interesting plot-wise to come out of it.
I don't think that affected my rating any, but like you, I kind of thought there would be more to it than just finally something that's actually is important, a human moment between these two characters. So there you go. Now we've kind of skipped over in between, Solo's absolute freak out. I must protect the vault. We have the underwater sequence, and you're looking at that water. You don't know what's in there. There's a lot of electricity in this silo. You don't know if you're going to get shocked and electrocuted. Juliette jumps into the water. She does have an air hose, but I would not do this at all. Would you do this? Would you jump in this mucky water? Oh,
I wouldn't unless I had a suit. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she can wash herself off with some more coffee.
It's good. You always smell good when you wake up and douse yourself in coffee, literally. Do you think the show is going to be okay or be able to be okay with Juliette being so physically separated from all the other characters except Solo? Like, is the show handling this well? Is our Captain Nemo going to do well in her kind of solo storyline? Or do we need, as an audience, Juliette to get back to her buddies?
I think we do eventually, but she's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Right? She's got to come up with a suit that has more oxygen in it, that is better protected, and then she's got to figure out her way. How is she going to get into Silo 18?
Right. If she builds this suit, like she seemingly almost had enough oxygen to leave her original silo and get into this destroyed silo. Is she going to be able to build a suit where she can get to the original silo and be there for a bit? Or is she going to have to, run out of oxygen and run back to this one with solo? Really interesting, crazy questions. Listeners,
right. Well, the other thing is she's got to do is, it seems like the suit held up and it was just the oxygen thing. But if she's going to be messing around more, she's also got to make sure she's got the good tape.
I would be dual ply. I would do like 5 rolls of the good tape. I don't want any toxins killing me. Another bit of silo speculation. Do you have an idea of what happened to Solo's eye? We noticed he said the girl in class loved his 2 blue eyes. One of them ain't so blue anymore. Any thoughts there?
I thought maybe he was so tired of listening to himself talk. He poked himself in the eye to get him to stop talking.
Oh, terrible, terrible. I'm the one who gave this 4 out of 10. You're not allowed to be so mean.
Well, what do you think, Bubba? What do you think happened to Solo's eye?
I wonder if, obviously the silo was open for a bit, meaning maybe both doors as the people fled in the rebellion and they all died outside before at least one of the doors closed all the way. I wonder if toxins got in and kind of messed him up for a bit. And maybe that could also explain why he's so scattered as a personality. I don't know. Catfish, let's go next to a storyline which they really didn't spend any time on, but I've already kind of given you my thoughts on it. And that's Sheriff Billings investigates. Sheriff Billings can walk all the way down to the down deep to find who did it. He says goodbye to his wife. His wife is part of the upstairs or the up top people who are panicked about the mob coming up from mechanical. But last week, Deputy Hank said, Sheriff, we need you down here. Billings goes. What did you think of this scene, these detective duo of Billings and Hank?
Deputy Hank, he's I told you, he's like a cockroach. He is going to survive no matter what. I actually like the two of them putting it together only because, and I think the reason why they need to figure out what's going on here is so that Billings can, and Deputy Hank can somehow be involved in whatever happens next, because the people from mechanical don't seem like they're going to be getting anything done.
Now, let me ask you this. So, in my initial take on this section, I mentioned, dear God, we've got these cops investigating something which we know all the answers to. And I'm sure a lot of listeners say, well, gee, the whole show was Columbo investigating something where the audience knew, who did it, who did the crimes, and people enjoyed that show. The movie, the first one that came to my head was the Best Picture winner Fargo. That movie features a police detective investigating something where we, the audience, know everything that's happened. We know all the answers to the crimes that she's investigating. And yet those are things people loved. And so I was like, why did this particular scene rub me so wrong? And I think part of it was that in Columbo, he could bust these criminals and he could end up on top. In Fargo, that this policewoman investigating these crimes, she's smart, she's resourceful, she could bust these people and come up on top. Billings, the way the show presents him to me, like say he comes to Sims and says, Sims, I know you plotted this out. You're the reason why Cooper was killed. Sims, you did it. You're under arrest. With Billings having the syndrome, which is really something that, the show only brings up when it needs it, I don't see any way Billings can come out on top. So it's almost like he's investigating something we already know happened. And even if he comes to the solution, in the end, Judicial can just throw him in jail because he's got the syndrome. I don't see. I wonder about what this story will really do.
Interesting. So, I think part of that I love the examples that you brought up, Fargo and Columbo, because the first thing I thought of when you mentioned both of those characters is that they are so fun and quirky, and we are really rooting for them.
Yep.
It does seem like they're not fit enough, that the two of them will not be able to go against all of IT, judicial, everybody.
Right. So, listeners, I've been real tough on this storyline. Once again, one thing I love is hearing people who have completely different takes, who enjoyed this show, which has given me so much enjoyment. and frustrated me at times. And so if you love these two, and I love these two, but if you love the storyline, please give us a comment. Tell me why you love it. Even just telling me you love it is enough to make me hopefully re-examine it. So when these two seem to be continuing their investigation in episode 5, I won't be so quick to be like, oh, here we go again, which I hope I don't do. All right, Catfish, how about we talk about the scene of Lukas, who's been sentenced to the mines. Hey, there's a brand new scene, and guess what ends up? What changes? He's sentenced to the mines. Lukas gets his day before the judge, and there isn't really much to it. So, I mean, there's kind of some neat stuff to it, and some things I like, but in the end, it didn't really change the story in any meaningful way. What did you think of Judge meeting with Lukas and hearing his petition?
It was a shock that sometimes when you watch the previously on, you're like, oh, this is coming back? We saw Lukas on the previously on. I was like, yep. Oh, wow, Lukas is still a thing. And I feel like that was the point of Lukas's scene. Lukas is still a thing. Don't forget about him. We're going to use him later, so we just needed to bring him up.
Yeah, that also felt that way to me. I did make a couple of notes. The judge is trying to sell, everybody's got their role to play in the silo, and she holds up this looks like a tin, maybe container of some sort, and she's like, look at this tin container. It was made from minerals from the mines. The mines are crucial to our survival. And I really wanted Lukas to say, Judge, I think even if we didn't have that tin can, we'd still survive.
Right. I think you should just put your jewelry in a drawer. I don't know. Is it necessary that this be metal, this container?
And then the other thing that I actually did, okay, so I'm being very snarky and negative, but one thing I did like was kind of this eye-opening reality that in this silo's schools, they aren't teaching people. We knew from season 1 that Lukas didn't really know what the stars were, but he knows nothing about the planet he's on. He knows nothing. Do you think they even say it's a planet? Like, I thought that was fascinating. The judge opens his eyes and then sends him to the mines. Hey, real good work there, Lukas. Back down to the mines, sucker.
I mean, it feels like Lukas is his own Columbo here. The fact he's able to figure out so much from just looking at the view screen is nigh on unbelievable.
All right. Well, then there are kind of two other big storylines. The Sims impeachment / Bernard takes his, gives his mercy to Judge Meadows, or the Down Deep crew coming up. What do you want to talk about next?
Let's talk about the Down Deep crew coming up, simply because, again, having read the book, I thought that this was going to be a little bit more detailed, but it also ended up being a lot more complicated.
That's true.
Than the book.
So in the Down Deep area, so remember, listeners, we haven't really spent a lot of focus on it in this season, but at the bottom of our original silo, there's this giant open space where the digger, which dug the silo, has just been left. There's also this giant pool of water down there, almost like a great lake of water down at the bottom of the silo. And there's also apparently some graffiti. So head of mechanical Knox and Shirley have been butting heads. Shirley wants war. Knox wants, hey, there's no point. We got to handle this wisely. And Knox is trying to show Shirley about, hey, you know what? There's all this graffiti down there. If you actually read the graffiti, it might be telling us that this wall lists all the rebellions that have happened that are getting blamed on us and the people from Mechanical who got killed. So what did you think about this?
One notably funny thing here was, speaking of people who are able to figure things out from almost no evidence,
Columbo.
Is Knox saying, I think before this last rebellion, there was a rebellion every generation. Before this last rebellion, 120 whatever years ago. And I just thought to myself, how does Knox figure that out? Were there dates? Are the dates consistent?
They want the truth, and they don't want to ask for the truth. They're going to demand it. Of Knox says of getting this meeting with the mayor. Why on a meeting with the mayor? Now they are down at what level? 140. They walk all the way up to 119 to get Carla from supply, and then they're going to walk up close to what feels like 100 flights of stairs. why are you bringing these two old women up 100 flights of stairs? This seems crazy, Catfish. This guy who's been in all the episodes, he doesn't really get named a lot, but the black gentleman, the black actor, is named Teddy, and he's like, I want to go. And they're like, no. We're going to bring these senior citizens instead, Teddy. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's just the idea of the, like, that it's not just like the hotheads, it's the people with the institutional knowledge.
Okay, that's good.
And
that's good.
And that this is going to be a rational discussion. These older people don't want war. They just want to explain, hey, look, we've been doing this a long time. But also it's like they're kind of the ones in charge, right? So it's not just the institutional knowledge, but it's like, again, it's not like we sent up a couple guys who have this opinion. It's like, we represent supply. We represent mechanical.
And these characters, which you talked a lot about when you were talking about your review of this episode, Catfish, they're giving these moments. They're giving Walker and Carla these moments of like, let's make them well-rounded. In the first season, Walker really just was this fix-it woman who felt a motherly type affection towards Juliette. Knox is an archetype. He's the big brawly guy who leads mechanical, who's gruff. And Shirley was kind of an archetype as well. She is Juliette's friend who has a lot of energy, a lot of vigor. And so you have this scene where they stop at, I guess, like a park level, and they can kind of stop and talk about what they want to do in this plan to, listen, we're going to volunteer to go outside and then look around. Let me tell you, if people thought I could put on this suit, I could go outside, look around, and then come back and get in, everybody in the silo would want to do that, wouldn't you? Like if everybody thought, hey, I could just go up, look around for a little bit, then come back down, everybody would want to do it. There's no way that anybody can allow them to do it. Maybe they don't realize that, but Knox says, what's he going to do when he gets outside? He wants to see the distance. This is a world where the farthest you could ever look is just from down or up, up or down, and not very far in any other direction because there is no distance. He also says he wants to see Juliette, quote, this not knowing if she's alive or dead is killing me. Did that in any way help you connect more with these kind of archetypes, hothead, gruff leader of mechanical and hothead kind of friend of Juliette?
Sometimes people pay more attention than I do, or they pick up more than I do. I thought that this feelings of Knox towards Juliette was sort of like, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but like, but what the heck? Like, he's almost making it seem like he had an emotional connection to her, and
he's the guy who in season 1, remember, he turned her into Judicial because he didn't think her life was worth causing all this sort of, kind of damage to possibly the rest of mechanical. So yeah, this is proving that somewhere in that gruff exterior, he did have emotional feelings towards her for sure.
All right. Well, I mean, I felt there was a lot of like in this episode, so that makes 4 different groups of people all of a sudden expressing emotional feelings for somebody. Yeah. And that was a lot. That was a lot to cram into one episode.
Let's pause here, even though when they're at the park, Billings secretary Sandy and Deputy Molly show up and say, hey, we're going to escort you the rest of the way because we know there's trouble upstairs. So let's now double back to the beginning of the Up Top where Sims and Bernard, Sims who really wants to be Bernard's shadow, he can never get on the same page as Bernard. And this is kind of fascinating where, Sims is like, why are we allowing these mechanical people to come up top? Sims, I don't believe, knows that Bernard has been spreading the, anti-down deeper propaganda against them with the Up Tops. But Sims is like, hey, stop it. Bernard is like, no. Obviously, these two, you would think by the end of the episode, are going to be working real close together. But here at the beginning, they are on exact opposite sides.
Yes.
Then Bernard goes to the mayor and he's like, you're meeting with mechanical, you're listening to Lukas. And the mayor says, boy, you're not serious. If you were being serious, you would have brought my cleaning suit. Catfish, when did you know that Bernard was never going to give her a suit? Instead, he was going to give her some mushrooms. Did you know at this point in the episode, the mayor would soon be gone?
I never believed that Bernard was going to let her out.
Yeah, I didn't either in any way.
So I honestly, when he invited her to his room, I thought it was just another excuse. Oh, yeah, I'll have your suit, for him to try to wine and dine her. I did not realize that he was going to bump her off.
Okay. I knew he was never going to let her go out, but I thought he would keep up the charade longer. I really did. I thought he would give her some silly suit, to be like, here, start getting comfortable. This is the way it works or something. I didn't think that this would be it until later when she showed up at his apartment. That's when I thought, oh, yeah.
I mean, I guess if I had thought it through, I wonder how many of our listeners, when they realized that the judge was marked for death, and not in the fun way, the cleaning way, in the mushroom way. Because honestly, it wasn't until she said, what was the poison in, I was like, oh, so that one, basically, Bubba, I didn't figure that out until the judge held up a sign that said, Catfish, I have been poisoned and I'm going to die.
Before we get to the official My Dinner with Bernard scene, do you have any thoughts about Camille and Robert Sims? Like, don't you wish you with your partner could be such on the same page? They're like, hey, let's impeach the judge. Well, that could be destabilizing. Yeah, honey, or it could unite the upper half. Let's do it. Let's impeach the judge. Like, this is the, I guess Camille Sims, we don't really know too much about her other than she used to work in judicial and she wants her husband to be Bernard's shadow. Heck, wonderfully supportive. And Sims is supportive of her. Wonderful couple.
They are. I mean, at what point will they realize that they just can't pull over anything on Bernard, and anything they do is going to redound against them instead of in their favor?
Right. When you invite them over to your holiday party, you're like, oh, hey, Camille. Hey, Robert, what have you guys been up to? Well, we, impeached. We've been working on this plan to get Sims to be Bernard's shadow. Oh, okay. Yeah, you were talking about that at the last holiday Christmas party, too, and the one before that. You guys don't have any other interests? You have a son. Who? Your son, remember? He's fine. We want to. Robert Sims has got to be Bernard's shadow. The end.
Yeah.
Before dinner, Bernard is back to being the Bernard we love from season 1. Let's get crunk. Let's open up the liquor bottle. Hell yeah. So he's been drinking. He's furious because she's doing all this stuff that he doesn't like. Everything about that is prohibited by the pact. Bam. And the judge is like, yes, they're going to come up here. They're going to talk about it, but I'm going to kill it with bureaucracy.
No, I think this might be one of the Catfish questions later on, but so let's just handle it now.
Sure.
At what point does Bernard say to himself, I have to kill her? And if it was earlier than this episode, why is he even bothering to bark at her if he knows she's going to be gone?
Wonderful question. Well, he was never going to let her go outside. I think we both agree on that. Theoretically, he later yells to Sims, your impeachment stuff made me kill her. Yeah, kill her today as opposed to tomorrow.
Right.
It's ridiculous. There was a spark between these two actors. There was kind of a weird thing, like you said, where is this romance? Is this, long felt partnership? Come to my dinner. Come to my apartment for dinner tonight. As long as my next steps are out the airlock. I mean, you got a shot.
It's saying at what point did he decide I'm going to kill these two birds with one stone? Mm-hmm. Because it already seemed like the uppers were already, ready to tear the mechanicals apart. It didn't seem necessary it's like gilding the lily to add this part to it. Well, I mean, maybe this is and if he just said it, that would have made more sense. Maybe if it was more for the mitts.
Okay. No, that's a good call. Date night at Bernard's. To me, he's putting on a record and a record player. Are those not red level relics? Maybe because they're, they don't have any lyrics. It's okay. I mean, this is some odd stuff. I mean, Bernard is negging the judge. He's like, man, you could train for 12 hours a day, you still wouldn't be able to do the race, flabby McJudge.
Damn. I mean, really, it's like, you're about to kill her, like, whatever.
I know. How about this? Boy, man, I thought you did great in the race. Come on. Bernard, I wrote in the notes, the one thing, once again, there are little things I like. This is one of them. Bernard, a bit like Solo, we saw in the other silo, is like, I have to protect the vault. I have to be in the vault. I'm in charge. I do these things. And I felt like Solo might be a bit brainwashed. Bernard is a bit brainwashed too. I have to follow the order. And he kills her. The end, but he kills her and then gives her kindness. You've heard of killing somebody with kindness. He's like, I'll kill her, then give her some kindness.
He kills her real slow. He kills her with enough time, Bubba, for her to just do a lot of exposition.
Yes.
There was a secret I learned. This is the best. She doesn't seem like she's torturing Bernard, but this is the best. Someone poisons you and you're like, I've got a secret. And you're like, what is it? And it's like, you're never going to find out because I only have 6 minutes left and I'm not going to tell you in that 6 minutes. So she stepped down.
Yep.
It wasn't because she didn't want to tether herself to Bernard. In fact, at the very end, it seems like all this time when we thought Bernard was just being creepy on her, that she did have feelings for Bernard.
Yes.
And that is a strange time to, number one, not tell someone a secret.
Yep.
Number two, tell someone who's just poisoned you, yeah, I really care about you.
How about this? Catfish, how would you react if somebody said, I've just poisoned you? You wouldn't try to make yourself wretch or something? Come on.
No, she's very calm. How long do I have? He is like, minutes, not hours. And then he takes her through that whole weird thing where he's like guiding her through the look here, look there. And so that, again, as I said, the melodrama in that scene.
He wanted to be David Attenborough. Look at this animal in the woods.
That was just bizarre.
So real quickly, on that hard drive, let's get to it. So on that hard drive, we understand that it had something to do with a character named Salvador Quinn, who apparently was the head of IT 140 years ago when that rebellion that we keep hearing about what happened. He wrote something in the code. The judge deciphered the thing in the code, and then she said, I'm a shadow, no more. My favorite thing about this, the judge's final words were, I thought, very wonderful, and they were also something I think all audience members are asking. What did they do, Bernard? How did they lose this world? Isn't that something that probably all viewers want to know the answer to? How did we lose this world? How did we end up in this dang silo that stinks? Poetic.
All right. And that caused her to no longer be with shadowing Bernard, but then somehow she decides, even though she's depressed about the state of the world and the state of the silo, she decides to become the judge while also being an alcoholic.
Why not? How about,
it doesn't make sense there, right?
If you don't want to remember something, how about give me the forget me drugs, right?
That, or it just doesn't make sense to be like, I no longer want to be involved in like the doings of the silo, and this has depressed me, but also I want to be the judge. Something doesn't make sense there to me, and maybe our listeners can help me figure it out.
Let's get to the end of the episode, Catfish, which I think a lot of people loved. I know we have been real tough on the episode as a whole, but I see this feedback online. What they loved was Bernard's wickedness, his evilness. He's got the up-toppers against the down-deepers. This guy here, these animals want to destroy the silo. Either go back down the stairs or over the side. Wow, that is your uncle at Thanksgiving. Holy smokes.
Damn.
And I loved, once again, here, let me keep talking about things I actually enjoyed in this episode. I've already said it. The idea of how are we going to communicate with the people down deep? We're just going to, drop them signals. Now, how long would it take a red ball to fall? Approximately 98 floors, kind of a bit of time. And then, okay, it's finally, we see a red ball. Now we got to turn off the power. It happens a bit quicker for TV. Thank you very much. But did you like Knox pretty much having a bit of a gun behind his back saying, listen, the power is going to stay out until we see the judge?
No, I do like that. It's understandable in the show. There for sure feels like they're overplaying their hand a little bit. In retrospect, overplaying their by even leaving the down deep, they've overplayed their hand. But in the end, there is nothing they could do, right? Because this is Bernard is following the playbook, and the playbook says, number one, blame mechanical. Number two, blame mechanical, and number three, have you blamed mechanical yet?
Have you blamed mechanical today? But how about this? The book says, first and foremost, in the event of failed cleaning, prepare for war. This doesn't feel like preparing for war. This feels like start a war. Get the silo fighting itself rather than fighting you. So a bit odd, I'll admit. What did you had some odd thoughts about Carla from Supply dropping these balls over the side?
Well, these are crimes. You cannot. Isn't that true? You're not allowed to drop shit.
You could really hurt somebody dropping.
You could really hurt somebody. I'm surprised that nobody got. Someone was just walking around. They're like, yeah, the ball hasn't come down yet. I'm just gonna cross here. I got to get something real. No, gone.
Here we go. Sims is back with Bernard. They've staged this. They allow Knox and Shirley into the room. I don't know if I loved it or if I hated it. The fact that everybody is kind of just like, yeah, this is what it is. Like there was a brief moment where Knox and Shirley are about to tear themselves, start to go wreck on the shop. But real quickly they say, okay, no, let's just leave. Bernard's even like, hey, I'm not going to prevent you. And so it almost becomes like an anticlimactic, okay, we've just been framed. All right, well, let's get out of here. I thought that was, I either thought it was fascinating or I hated it, and maybe a bit of both. Any thoughts about what this sets up, Catfish? Bernard is the one who said the people of the silo need to take care of it themselves. Sims is, saying, listen, guys, it's time for mob justice. It's time for you to take on the down deepers.
There's a couple things here too. It is a little weird that the mechanical doesn't realize, we're just screwed here. I mean, I can't. Right. They needed an armed guard to get up. Yep. And had to turn the lights off to get up the last whatever. So the fact that they think they can get down and don't react like trap rats and just try to, there they are. They're being blamed for this. Take down whoever you can. This is your only shot.
You should have brought up more red balls and just start throwing as you're running down the stairwell. Red ball.
So that was a little weird. Them thinking they're going to be able to get back down. They should be in panic mode. They should not be able to react like that.
We know there are deputy stations, in the mids and everywhere. They should be as panicked as Juliette was during her kind of crazy runs.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, I was not sold on Sims' monologue. Completely not necessary to rile people up. Also, he's like,
he didn't have much passion in his voice.
Well, okay, but I'm not. You're not. We know why that is.
Be careful.
We know why that is.
Okay.
But it's that is completely unnecessary, and again, because there wasn't much passion, it also didn't play as well as it could have. So then you're just like, why not just say what happened? Mm-hmm. Also, the funny thing is, Bernard says, "Don't let them get too far," right? Which is weird because it's like, first of all, you want the mob to handle the justice. And number two, they're walking/running down, and you can always just send a little note to the mids,
right?
And boom, you can get people running up from the mids to get them.
Bernard is all about being evil, and so that's going to lead us to all rise, a judicial debate without a judge, because now Judge Meadows is dead, Catfish.
Oh,
this is a judicial debate without a judge. So
okay.
We're just going to call this a debate.
Okay.
Let's hear it. Who do you think is best positioned to be our next character to die? So you've got two old women in Walker and Carla running down a stairwell with, at the end of the episode, a 2-floor lead on the mob coming to kill you. You've got Knox, who is running, but is certainly probably ready to throw a punch or get into it with anybody. You've got Juliette diving underwater. You've got Shirley feels a connection to Walker. You've got Billings investigating something he shouldn't. You've got Lukas, who we realize is a thing, who can't last in the mines a year. Who do you think is next to, who's best positioned to be our next dead character?
Well, I mean, if there's any logic whatsoever, it has to be one of our 4 mechanicals fleeing mob justice from above and presumably below.
Yep. Okay, but do you have a favorite of those? Like, let's hear your betting odds on those.
Oh, my favorite to die?
Yeah, you're well, okay, hold on. Maybe we'll save that for feedback because we have some feedback about your favorite to die. So we'll just hold off on that until that happens.
All right.
I'll go ahead and say that I think probably Carla and Carla's death. So we keep hearing about, hey, there's mechanical, there's supply, there's, obviously the people who watch the farms, there are all these people. But if you were to kill Carla, if the show were to kill Carla, then you could have a different group, meaning mechanical and supply working together as like, hey, justice for Juliette from mechanical, justice for Cooper from mechanical, justice for Carla from supply. So,
okay, interesting.
That'll be my argument for her.
I mean, I think all 4 of them got to go. I can't imagine how any of them would survive the mob justice. So
you give them forgetting drugs, so they can't, they can't do nothing.
All right, Bubba, we have our double D, double K.
What now?
The deeply dumb catfish questions.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
All right, Bubba, we covered a couple of these. I always write them down ahead of time. So let's see. We've covered why did the judge need to die?
Yep.
We covered what secret did the judge learn that caused her to break up with Bernard and stop drinking. It was the truth about what happened in the world, right?
Yep.
But now here is one, Bubba, that I think is interesting. And after having read the book, this question is also not answered in the book.
In the first book. Okay, let's hear it.
In the first book.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's hear it.
So it seems like the show has told us how important the mechanicals are. And we've been with them.
Yep.
And so we've seen things from their point of view. They're in charge of the power and everything for the silo.
Mm-hmm.
But if they always get killed first, and it seems to me that a lot of them get killed.
Oh, yeah. Man, a lot of graffiti on that wall, yeah.
And their institutional knowledge is lost. Therefore, you have to start all over again with mechanical.
Yep.
How important can they actually be? How vital are they to the silo if they're the ones who always got first? It would seem to me you'd want to take people from the mids, from people who aren't doing vital jobs. So how important are these mechanicals actually?
Catfish, well, obviously the answer, if you ask them, is they're the most important person in the silo. You don't remember season 1? Everybody was like, I'm the most important. Yeah, you generate power, but what would that power do if it weren't for my servers? So my servers, I'm the most important person in the silo. Yeah, you have servers and power, but if we don't have food, you guys would starve. What's the point of power if you don't have food growing? I'm the most important person in the silo. Yeah, you have food, but what if you don't have health? If you don't have me, you won't even be born. I'm Dr. Nichols, and I make sure some people are born and some aren't. So I would say that the order must list mechanical as saps because maybe you don't really even need mechanical. Like, remember the generator, which we spent so much time in season 1 focused on and fixing. The weird thing about that generator is the steam comes out from here and does and we don't know where the steam comes from. And so is it possible that all the work mechanical does is kind of pointless in that the people who built these silos will have them run even if nobody's there, right? Like, what if that's it? Well, maybe that explains how Solo lives.
Right. That would explain how things are still working in Silo 17, despite someone who only cares about organs and elephants. And elephants' organs. And tusks.
Any other catfish questions?
That's it. That's all I have for today, Bubba.
All right. Well, then let's go to a segment which people actually wrote and said, hey, where's the musical analysis? Matt, believe it or not, enjoyed a week off on episode 2. On episode 3, He sent us a musical analysis, and I missed it in my email. I was running to Thanksgiving. I'm so sorry, Matt. But we do have a great analysis from Matt on episode 4. Matt, what do you think?
So, Atlee's score this week was at least mildly interesting to me. I'll be perfectly honest, the score has not been the focus for me watching this show. And as the guy who's supposed to talk about the score, that makes it kind of difficult. But the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of things that Atlee does that is fairly textbook for film scores and that type of thing. And he's not really showing me anything that I haven't already seen or heard, although that's the case with a lot of television these days. But there are some things that he just keeps going back over and over and over again. And one of the things is just using these kind of in the background pads that don't change enough or change too much, or sometimes he just uses that whole repetitive motif thing where the same set of notes are played over and over and over again in order to build tension. But after a while, your brain kind of gets mush about that, and it doesn't really register anymore. So I'm kind of worried about that with him. But this week, it wasn't so much the melody, it wasn't so much the harmony, because those things were pretty standard, but it was the orchestration of the moment with the judge that really got my attention. Normally, we tend to think of harmonies being in thirds. You know, a note that is just a harmony directly above or a harmony directly below. And that's not always the case with film scores, but it seeps so much into our popular music and into our popular culture that we tend to forget that there's a whole palette of notes that can be played far distances apart that can create similar types of harmonies, but with a different kind of feeling. That occurred when Bernard was telling the judge about the monkey and the camouflage and all of that. There was a particular motive that was played, and the harmony to it was spaced not a third, but a tenth apart. It sounded like this. If I took that lower note of the harmony and raised it one octave, it would be just a third again, and you would have that close-knit kind of harmony that we are used to. But by spacing it out, not only does it add a sense of openness and emptiness, as this moment really kind of is for Bernard, more so than it is for the judge, but it gives everything a depth that makes you feel a little more sorrowful, that makes it feel a little more tragic. As I said, the melody itself, not that big of a deal. The one surprise in the harmony was that the 4 chord, which in a minor key would normally be minor, was major instead. But that's nothing new either. But I was very impressed by the choice, because it could have been done in any number of ways, but the choice to use those parallel tenths again made everything seem more empty, more sorrowful, and in its own way, more beautiful as well, which kind of goes along with what the judge was feeling, seeing this stuff from Costa Rica. Anyway, that's my musical analysis for this week. Back to Bubba and Catfish.
Oh, thank you, Matt. So wonderful.
Love it. Never
Catfish,
give up. Never say die, Matt.
Catfish, we have gone a long time, but we need to celebrate the people who really make this show possible. And that's our Double L loyal listeners and their feedback. Let's hear it.
All right. From YouTube, Noel says, you guys are great. Enjoy the commentary, fun and professional. Bubba, those are 2 words I thought anyone would ever use to describe our podcast. So that is great. Tommy Shabalongdong says, yeah, best solo content. That was a good point, Zach.
Zach last week said we were the best silo content. Thank you so much, Zach. Hopefully these people still think so when we rate this episode so poorly. Thank you so much. Somebody with Jop Warmy just said, I love this podcast, and left us 3 laughing, crying emojis. Thank you so
Love
much,
it.
Chop.
Love it. Molly Keegan says, I'm such a Catfish fan. Yes.
What?
Yes. Finally, after 12 years, someone is a fan. I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you both.
Well, it was nice of your mom to leave feedback, Catfish. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But now, as a counterpoint, Wayne Rogers says, one question, why is Catfish so down on Walker?
All right, let's answer Wayne's question. Why are you so down on Walker, Catfish?
What did I say about Walker that I was down on Walker?
You were so down on her last week. It's funny, you're like, I read the book this week and I remember it, but you don't remember last week's podcast where you literally spent the whole time saying, Walker, she could die.
You know what? You didn't let me, but I was going to pitch her to be the first to die this week. So you know what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Wayne, but I promise you, if she dies next episode, I will be super excited about that. So does that count?
No. You didn't. You know, the end one question is why, and you talked about a million things, but the why. Oh my goodness, Wayne, I'm sorry. We'll never know. We'll never know why. Okay, so we had feedback about the infamous, wonderful memory erasing drug. And so Tobe Wilson Network wrote us. He said, when I'm listening to your podcast about the forgetting drug, the real funny part is I got to that bit of the podcast, but now I don't know what it's about. Very good. Trouble Follow writes, the silo has memory erasing drugs. So why does the judge drink much? Like, we assume she drank because she wanted to forget about the silo being a prison and you can't escape and you're trapped in this thing. But as soon as she heard somebody left the silo, she actually stops drinking. In episode 1, and this is in Solo Silo, in episode 1 of season 2, the sheriff over there asks why this person named Russell wouldn't open the door. And could this have been Solo keeping the door closed? I really think the way it worked, Trouble Follows, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but it feels like the rebels in the beginning of season 2, episode 1, were trying to take down the Bernard of their silo. His name was Russell. Russell seemingly wouldn't open the door that Solo was in, meaning he wouldn't open the door to the vault. And they're like, why wouldn't he open the door? And the sheriff's like, no, I don't know why he wouldn't open the door. So that's the way I think it goes. But obviously, we got 6 more episodes to answer that wonderful feedback. As always, Trouble Follows.
All right, and we got feedback. We got some Thanksgiving feedback, Bubba.
Ooh,
just feedback about the show Silo and how it intersects with Thanksgiving. Skeptical Zach says episode 3 was so good. I listened to about 3 hours of the first book yesterday.
All right.
It was a different narrator than the Audible version, and I prefer it. I sure hope Catfish isn't right and this series doesn't get canceled, leaving us hanging. Ooh. I'd rather deal with Sims than hear my in-laws try to convince themselves why tariffs will actually lower prices.
Zach, let us know if you survive Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.
I'm still waiting for reports of turkey legs to the trachea from Thanksgiving. Nothing so far.
No Pico Jake wrote, Solo can't be the only person in that abandoned Silo 17. They continue, Bernard's by the book ass doesn't need to be shadowed by HR. LOL. I want to know how many people didn't go out and tried to get into the vault. We know they're the 2 bodies outside. We know Ron Tucker ran so Juliette can walk. That's so funny. Ron was the person from who did the failed cleaning in Solo Silo. He said, but since it's Thanksgiving, can a brother get some chicken stew from Solo? Wonderful feedback from No Pico Jake.
All right, Bub, we got feedback on who you are rooting for.
On the show,
Mr. Goodcat says, absolutely rooting for Juliette. I don't understand lying, hiding history, stopping technological advances, and the cleaning process. They already have minds for criminals. Just add a death penalty for murder if you wish and let them go roam freely outside. P.S. As a triple T, true time traveler, just finished your podcast on Dark.
Ooh.
Little show that just came out yesterday. Brilliant.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Goodcat. We had, is it pronounced Enoch Robinson? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Enoch Robinson wrote, I'm rooting for Lukas in the mines. What's going on with him? Well, Enoch, we saw him in this episode, and the description for the next episode sounds like he'll be back for episode 5.
Look at that. So I blame Enoch for Lukas coming back. I, Optimus Prime, says, I only root for Juliette and Solo, no one else.
Dang.
This is what. So you know what? They need to be asked why, just like me, why they hate Walker so much.
Hey, no way. Come on. Ignacio wrote, I'm rooting for Juliette and Solo, that team. At this point, Solo and Jules seem to have a complementary approach to problem solving. Well, at the beginning of this episode, Juliette, not so complimentary. But, Ignacio is also rooting for Bernard. That's wonderful, because it doesn't matter how much access to information Bernard has or knows from what actually happened out there. For the first time, Bernard has to put on a thinking cap, and Ignacio is rooting for him. Ooh, so good.
Zombie Talion says, Catfish, the truth is terrible. You can't handle the truth.
No, he can't.
Sims in the show, I'm not sure what his ultimate plan is. Bernard, as bad as he seems, I can understand his decisions, but ultimately I'm rooting for Juliette. Okay. I'm standing by my previous comment that Bernard is going to use the bad tape. R.I.P. Coop.
R.I.P. Coop.
And now, Third Irate 508 says, I'm rooting for the guy on level 22. Forgot his name.
I think that might be Patrick Kennedy. And it turns out if it is Patrick Kennedy, he's still alive. Do you know who the character on level 22 was, Catfish?
I have no idea.
Okay, I didn't think so. There we go. Catfish, it takes the forgetting drug before every podcast. Our good friend Patman, who's at Patman, Patman, on Blue Sky, they wrote, I'm not rooting for Bernard. Even though he's trying to keep the whole silo viable, I cannot condone the dictatorship and secret police tactics. So I'm rooting for Batman is rooting for the masses, even if they might breach the doors. But I think their hearts are in the right place. Well, their hearts may be outside their bodies if they get outside the door. He says, I hope Juliette can save them. I know Catfish finds the Bernard Judge dynamic creepy, but it is riveting.
I also agree it's riveting. It is riveting in its creepiness, for sure.
Patman gives kudos to Juliette's father, Dr. Nichols, for not being able to go along with reproductive deception anymore. He's still mad about the sheriff and his wife from season 1 not being able to have a baby. I'm hoping that
Batman is really holding on.
Yeah, he said, well, he did binge season 1, Catfish. Okay. He says, I'm hoping that Double S Syndrome Sheriff gets some steel and backbone when it comes to mechanical. I'd like to see them on the same side. And then Hank, he writes out a cut scene here. Hank says, I could use some backup and cover in case I get blamed if someone judicial raiders take over. Very good. Batman.
All right, we got some Judge Meadows, RIP feedback.
Yeah, let's hear it.
DV, Judge Meadows, shake on. DV says, I hope the judge has a plan. She seems to have been a bit of a rebel when she was a shadow. If what we know is more or less the same as what she knows, she's going for assisted dying, and I'll be disappointed if that's what she wants. She did not get what she wants.
Rini gave us this feedback that said, the great thing about Judge Meadows is it added a new character that book readers would have no idea what would happen to her. Rini said, I think whatever will happen to her will be sad. Rini, you were right.
I will say this, what happens to her is what happens to the majority of the characters in the books. They pop up, they gone. 1D Forever says episode 3 was a very good episode. I just wish they had shown episodes 1 and 2 together. I'm wondering if Meadows has another plan because Bernard won't let her safely leave. The Silo 17 content is the most interesting. All right.
Here's some more feedback on that abandoned Silo 17. Tim's Retro Corner wrote, the rope that was cut that Juliette was swinging from was on the wrong side of the broken bridge, so we know Solo couldn't have cut it. If Solo managed to survive in a secure hidey hole, it seems reasonable that somebody else could have managed the same. Being isolated, no reason for them to know about each other. Solo only knows about people coming up to his door. So Tim's Retro Corner is pitching, hey, what if there are other people hidden in that silo? Tim's favorite dialogue this last week of episode 3, he said, was Juliette saying, fire suits are not designed for survival outside. Solo, neither are the cleaning suits. Ow, snap back. Damn. He finally says that if you look in this server room, the vault, for a server room, you don't really see one server, just one book called The Order. And apparently 25 years plus worth of food for our good buddy Solo.
Now, that's assuming he has stayed in there. We don't think he's like Walker. Boo Walker.
Out.
I don't know why. I got to keep up the bit. So maybe he has come out and gotten supplies from other places.
One Bata wrote, there's a shot in episode 3 that looks like Juliette was being watched by someone. Boy, a lot of people think that. No Interleaving wrote that in season 1, episode 10, you see a lot of silos. But where you would think there would be silo 17 in that super wide shot of all the silos, and No Interleaving points out there weren't any bodies at all. So is it possible Juliette walked in a different direction than we thought she was walking in? He also says that the water that Juliette went to in this episode could be like really, really cold, like 5 degrees Celsius, and she didn't need a light to see underwater. Well, it turns out I'm pretty sure there were some lights somehow still on underneath the water, No Interleaving. I think that's how they're explaining it on the show.
Patman can explain that. All right, and Al Fly says, so I'm back in the silo.
All right.
No, I don't know if you guys saw Hugh Howey's Thanksgiving message to all of us, in which he discussed a little bit of this season and mostly this episode. I saw that Catfish said he almost wished you guys hadn't read my feedback last time.
Well, that's because Al was going to quit the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're back, Al. I'm sorry you feel that way, Catfish. I'm certainly not trying to diminish anyone else's fun. We are also not, and we are as harsh as you are. Yeah. Also, believe me, if people are enjoying the show as it is, then I'm more than happy for them. By all means, enjoy. I'm back for now, thanks to Hugh Howey. I want to believe Hugh Howey, and I want to stay in the silo with you guys. Al, we are happy to have you back in the silo.
Heck yeah.
I was only joking when I said I wish we hadn't read your feedback. Even if you were going to leave and never listen to us again, you're still the most important part of the show, because certainly I am not.
Rap Zid said episode 3 to him felt like a step in the right direction. He still felt like there were some major issues with inconsistent storytelling and dialogue. Rap Zid, hey, give us your feedback. We were really tough on episode 4. Some people loved it. I hope you loved it. But either way, let us know what you thought.
On Threads, we have Cam Shay 23. On episode 3, I rate it 9 out of 10 solo.
Whoa.
I'm glad Solo came out, but I still worry how much will change in Silo 17 from the book. I'm enjoying the series, though, separate from the books. And
that's the way you got it.
Matt Murdick, our good old buddy at Musical Concepts, who does the music, said, man, old friend zone Jorah got me this week.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he didn't care about his things. Guys, we're going to leave you right now, or you should leave us if you don't want to listen to the audio podcast for the Spoiler Book Talk on YouTube. Once again, this will be a separate video out on Tuesdays. If you're leaving now, know that we're going to talk to you next week on Season 2, Episode 5, entitled Descent. Sims finds himself with a new position. Juliette learns Solo isn't being honest. Bernard and Lukas make an important discovery. That's next week. If you don't want to hear book talk, know that you can always reach out to us. My name's Bubba. You can find me on all social media at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on social media.
All right, and you can hit me up at G to the Man, GEETOTHEMAN on Instagram and Blue Sky. And we'll talk to you next week on
The Cleaning.